everybody. Welcome to the Let Me Bend Your Ear podcast. This is Frank, the host of the show. If you listened to the last couple of episodes, I've indicated that I'm going to be trying to do more live feeds, either of actual podcast episodes or in the case like tonight. I'm jumping on real quick to do a quick live just to talk about a couple of things that have been going on. I'm going to use these lives to talk about things in between podcast episodes. The episodes, if you listen to the podcast on a regular basis, are basically not time sensitive in the sense that I want to record episodes that people can listen to either now or way down the road if they discover the podcast. Now, obviously, the exception to that being movie reviews. But a lot of the movies I review are older films. I've reviewed newer films in the last couple of episodes that are streaming. So again, those are not really time sensitive episodes per se. So I'm going to continue to do that. But I wanted to jump on tonight. One, I'm on both Twitter for the first time and on Facebook at the same time. So I'm using two different apparatuses to do that. Since obviously streaming on multiple platforms is a little bit tough. I have a limited, this is a low budget podcast. So basically I'm a one-man operation. So just working around the technology as best I can. So hopefully you can hear me. I know on the Facebook Live you should be able to hear me fine. Hopefully on Twitter you'll be able to hear as well. If you are on Twitter right now, if you're having trouble hearing me, please let me know. I'm using my cell phone for that live, so I know the sound quality on that might not be as good as is going to be here on Facebook Live, where I'm using the mic that I use to record the podcast. So what I wanted to get to tonight, if you listen to the podcast, you know I do politics, sports, and movies. I wanted to get into movies. I just found out a couple of hours ago that actor Hal Holbrook passed away. If you're unfamiliar with his work, he's an outstanding actor. He's been in hundreds of films and television. He was most famous for playing Mark Twain, but he's done great work on television and movies. When I was thinking about it, when I had heard he had passed away, one of the performances that I loved, and it's a small performance actually, in the 1987 Oliver Stone film Wall Street. So if you've seen that movie, Charlie Sheen is the main character, and he is a stock trader who is manipulated by master trader Gordon Gekko, played in the movie by Michael Douglas, who won an Academy Award for that performance. And he kind of falls under the spell and the lure of the easy money, using insider trading and illegal tactics. So at the firm that Charlie Sheen works for, he's a lowly stock trader, and he quickly ascends by doing things that are underhanded. And Hal Holbrook is one of the older stock traders. So there's two scenes that he's in with Charlie Sheen, just giving him advice about the way he's going and telling him that it's the wrong way. And then when things kind of fall apart, he kind of pops in again in the second scene, kind of in a good I told you so kind of way, but in the way that Hal Holbrook does the best. But very good actor. He was also Deep Throat in All the President's Men, the 1974 film with Dustin Hoffman and Robert Redford, regarding the Woodward and Bernstein uncovering of Watergate. So rest in peace, Hal Holbrook, great actor. Later in his career, he did a lot of television, and if you know, he was married to Dixie Carter of Designing Women, also appeared on that show as well. So again, very good actor. A lot of these actors of his generation are passing away. I know we lost Cicely Tyson this week, as well as Hal Holbrook. And then, of course, I know Dustin Diamond of Saved by the Bell fame passed away at 44 of lung cancer. So a couple of deaths this week of note in the entertainment world. Now, next thing I'm going to get to real quick for sports is the Super Bowl. So Super Bowl Sunday, obviously in the midst of COVID, it's been an interesting season for all the sports. Obviously, the NBA started playing in a bubble for the playoffs and were able to finish the season. The MLS played in a bubble as well. And the NFL, of course, did not play in a bubble. Major League Baseball played a bubble in the playoff in multiple cities, and so did the NHL, with the Stanley Cup being awarded actually to the Tampa Bay Lightning. So we're in the Super Bowl, so I'm super excited. I'm a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan. I grew up in Tampa, so the last Super Bowl that the Bucs were in was back in 2002 when Tony Dungy was still the coach. So from then until now, it's been about a 10 to 12 year drought. The Bucs have been if you follow football at all, the Bucs have been terrible. So within the last couple of years, though, they've been building the team through the draft, getting good young players. The last couple of seasons before this one, obviously Jameis Winston was the quarterback last season. Jameis Winston threw 30 touchdowns, which is fantastic, but he also threw 30 interceptions, which is not so fantastic. So based on that performance, they did not keep him, and they went all in on Tom Brady, which I know this is not breaking news to anybody. I was very excited back in March when Tom Brady came here. Of course, this coincided literally with the start of the pandemic, and not even knowing if there was going to be a football season or is there going to be a truncated season. And it ended up being a season with no preseason games, no OTAs, no training camp. So obviously a new quarterback, even one as great as Tom Brady, coming into a new system is going to have some struggles. And the Bucs did have some early season struggles. And actually, if you watched the sports media, probably myself included, being skeptical about how it's going to work, I always thought my expectations for them this season were to win about 10 games and make the playoffs, which I would have been completely happy with since it's been over a dozen years since they've made the playoffs before. So my expectations were tempered. I thought they would be better because they had a very good team before he got here. The issue, I think, last year with the Buccaneers was just too many turnovers. I mean, they were 7-9, and probably 3 of those games last year could have been won with either less turnovers or, unfortunately, better kicking. Kicking has always been a problem for the Bucs the last 5 or 6 years. But my expectations were 10 wins. So when they got out to a 7-5 record, I was a little concerned because they were struggling on offense. It didn't seem like Tom Brady was clicking with his receivers. It was just kind of up and down. So, at 7 wins, I was still pretty optimistic, but I wasn't sure if they were going to make any noise once they got into the playoffs. So then they get beat by the Chiefs, who destroyed them in the first quarter, but the Bucs ended up making it an interesting game in the second half and ultimately only ended up losing by 3 points. And then they went on a bye week. So coming back from the bye week, they haven't lost a game since. So it's been phenomenal to see that turnaround from the bye week. I think they made some adjustments defensively and offensively, and they've been clicking ever since. So getting into the playoffs, their first opponent was the Washington football team, which I think most people thought wasn't going to be too much of a challenge, and then actually ended up being a very close football game with their backup quarterback playing actually really well against the Buccaneers defense. So the Bucs squeaked out that game. So I think most people after that game, knowing that the Bucs were going to have to play the Saints, were not optimistic that they were going to beat Drew Brees, a division opponent who on both occasions in the season beat them in week 1 and then beat them handily later in the season, thrashed them. It wasn't even close. The game was over after the first quarter. So I think even the diehard Bucs fans were skeptical of beating the Saints in New Orleans with Drew Brees and the talent that they have on that team. So beautifully, the Bucs ended up winning that game, playing outstanding defense and making Drew Brees look mortal and kind of showcasing, I think, his deficiencies. And it looks like he's probably going to end up retiring. So great win for the Buccaneers. So that puts them in the NFC Championship game against the Packers. Now, I think, again, there was skepticism for a lot of people. Obviously, a lot of people think Aaron Rodgers is one of the best quarterbacks in football. He is one of the best quarterbacks in football. And it was kind of the opposite situation for the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers actually had beaten the Packers in Tampa earlier in the season, in Week 6, actually, and beat them pretty handily. Same thing, they kind of harassed Aaron Rodgers, kind of same thing they did with Drew Brees. But I think a lot of people were still picking the Packers because it was going to be in Lambeau. And then the weather situation, which as a Bucs fan, I'm tired of hearing about, it's cold, they're not going to be able to perform in the cold. It's ridiculous nonsense. So I wasn't worried about that. I was more worried about the fact that they were playing a Packers team that was hot. So they go into Lambeau and win that game and go to the Super Bowl. So I think now, as we get to this game here, now we're talking about Tom Brady versus Patrick Mahomes, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the Bucs are going to win the game. They're 3.5-point underdogs. I will say this: the Bucs have won 7 games in a row. They're peaking at the right time, and the last time they played them, outside of that horrendous first quarter, they actually hung with them the entire game. So I will say this: there is a very good possibility that the Bucs can win this game. And I'm confident that they have the ability to win this game if they're able to score enough points and keep Kansas City under control. I know they're not going to be able to shut them down. If that happens, then the Bucs will win the Super Bowl. But the Chiefs are just too good on offense to be shut down. But if they can keep them under control while still scoring the points that they score, and the Bucs have pretty much averaged about 30 points a game, and when they score 30 points, they usually win this season. And it just shows just the incredible quarterback that Tom Brady is. Tom Brady is the best quarterback of all time, and I always had him at number 2, even before he came to Tampa Bay. What made me put him at number 1 was this last Super Bowl that he won when he came back against the Atlanta Falcons. And like I said, I always thought he was 1 or 1A. I always still had Joe Montana as the number 1 quarterback. But after that game, that made it for me, cemented it for me that Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time. And this season with the Bucs should solidify that. Even if they don't win the Super Bowl, he took a team. Now, granted, like I said, he had a lot of talent on this team, but to do what he did this season, I think it was a mindset change. And especially after they struggled, it's not like they came out of the gate and won 8 or 9 games in a row, and it was just easy. They were struggling to find their identity on offense. What type of offense were they going to be? There was a lot of talk that Tom Brady wouldn't be able to adjust to the no risk it, no biscuit philosophy of Bruce Arians, who likes to throw the ball downfield, doesn't really use tight ends very often. But as you saw the season progress, especially after that bye week when they lost to the Chiefs, they were able to get the ball downfield, and Tom Brady's thrown the most touchdowns he's thrown in 10 years. So the kind of laughable talk about his physical abilities being limited because he's old, he throws a great deep ball. He throws it on target. He's thrown some ridiculous passes this season. So the rumors of Tom Brady's demise have been greatly exaggerated. I think they've been trying to put him out to pasture for the last 5 years. So again, they end up in the Super Bowl, which is fantastic. And I said this on another podcast that I was on regarding my fandom of the Buccaneers. So last time they won, I was a lot younger. I think it was a different mindset. I'm just happy that they're here. I think they can win this game, but I am so excited for the season. It's been a great ride. 2020 has been an awful year for obvious reasons, but the fact that I've been able to enjoy as a Tampa Bay sports fan, the Tampa Bay Lightning winning the Stanley Cup, the Tampa Bay Rays going to the World Series. They didn't win, but they went, and it was exciting. And now we've got the Buccaneers in the Super Bowl at home, which has never happened before. I just found out tonight they're not going to be firing the cannons at the stadium. I actually forgot about that. If you're not aware of it, there's a pirate ship in the Bucs Stadium, and every time the Bucs get in the red zone or score, they shoot off cannons. But they want to keep the quote-unquote neutrality of the game, so they're not going to be doing the cannon. So no big deal. It's going to be an exciting time. I know it's going to be a kind of different Super Bowl. I just saw the capacity is going to be 25,000 fans, and then 30,000 of those cutouts where people can send in their pictures. And I think 7,500 tickets have been allocated. Each team was able to pick first responders with an all-expense paid trip to the Super Bowl, which I think is a pretty cool thing to do. So definitely looking forward to that, and looking forward to seeing how that's going to work out. So that's something to be very excited about. So for me, it's going to be a great game on Sunday. Looking forward to seeing how that plays out. Now, this podcast also does politics. I haven't done a political podcast in a while, and that's been intentional. Obviously, the election has just happened, and it was very contentious, to say the least. And if you've listened to this podcast, when I've talked about politics in the past, I'll talk about it here a little bit as far as a bigger picture view of it. I am not a Democrat or a Republican. I'm not registered either way. I'm a registered independent. If you describe my political philosophy, I think I'm probably center, a little bit to the right, probably more libertarian in the sense that I think that there should be smaller government. And I think people can govern their own lives. So I'm a believer in that. But at the end of the day, I understand that government plays a role in our lives and can play a positive role in very certain areas. But that being said, I have disdain for both of the main political parties right now. If you go back a couple of months into my podcast, I was able to interview a couple of independent candidates Sean Howard, who was running for president as an independent, Angela Walker, who was the vice presidential candidate of the Green Party. And I was able to secure those interviews and discuss the third party situation with candidates. And for me, if you look at the Democrats and you look at the Republicans, it's pretty pathetic what's going on both sides. So basically, it's to the point now where it's devolved into not even getting things done or trying to come to some kind of consensus on important policy initiatives. And as it goes to COVID, I will say this one comment. I've said it, in private, and I'll say it here. The Congress can't even do low-hanging fruit. So what I mean by that is when you have people that are suffering because they've lost their jobs and you have an opportunity to get in and get something done, relief, anything like that, and they can't even come to an agreement on how to provide temporary relief to American citizens who are suffering because they can't work due to the pandemic, and all it devolves into is just an argument. I know there's been two stimuluses that have gone out, and then you get to the end of the year, and what's proposed is giving people that have been out of work for almost 9 months, depending on their situation, $600, and that's ridiculous. And most people, I think, agree that's ridiculous. And between the infighting and the name calling and the demonizing of the other party, and I'm talking about both parties, they're both guilty of it. And then you have the media, whether it's left-wing media or right-wing media, that's complicit in instead of reporting news, they're looking for ways to take pot shots at the other party. And basically, we just have ridiculous, unmitigated gridlock. So that's my overall view on that. And like I said, I'm pretty disgusted by it because I've been someone that's been interested in politics all my life. And I've been someone that's always tried to encourage people to participate in the process of voting and getting involved. And I think in the last couple of years, my focus needs to change, and it has changed because I've been not the greatest local voter. So I'm guilty of that as well, and working from the bottom up instead of from the top down. And I think a lot of us make that mistake of looking to the president to solve our problems or to do things the right way. But it's the politics is so toxic now that it's almost harder to do that. I think we all need to start looking from the bottom up, because where we live is where it is affected the most. So wherever our councilmen are, mayors, governors of the state that you live in, that's where I think a lot of voters need to focus their attention, because that's really going to have the most impact on your daily life, and that's where you can make the most impact with your votes. So that means showing up to those elections that historically have low turnout, which is any election that's not a presidential election, unfortunately. Those have low turnout. It requires some of the voters to do some heavy lifting and really research your local candidates, but that should be easier to do because that's closer to where you live. So hopefully you'd be able to do that. So I would encourage everybody out there, no matter who you support, if you're a Democrat, Republican, Independent, whatever your political stripe is, just participate in that process there, because I think that's where you're going to have the most impact. Not that you ignore the presidential campaign, but the problem I think here is what I found is that people are looking to people more than policies, and when their guy doesn't win, or when their guy does win, it almost becomes like a sporting event where you have people that are not really looking at the policies that they perform, but just the personality. And I understand personality is part of politics, but again, that's my two thoughts on that. And like I said, I'll do more podcasts with specific subjects regarding that. So again, if you haven't listened to the podcast, I encourage you to check it out. Like I said, I'm going to be doing more of these lives. I want to try to find new ways to engage with my audience. So again, the Twitter handle is at BendYourEarPod. That's also the handle on Instagram. Once I figure out how to go Instagram live, I'll do that as well. The Facebook page is Let Me Bend Your Ear. The email, if you want to email the show, is bendyourearpodcast@gmail.com. And you can also subscribe to the podcast YouTube channel. That is Let Me Bend Your Ear Podcast. Again, I usually do one of three topics: sports, movies, or politics. I dedicate each episode to one of those topics. If you do like the podcast and you're listening to it on Apple Podcasts, please do me a favor and rate and review. That's a hugely important thing for a small podcast like myself. What it does is the more ratings and reviews I get, the higher the podcast goes in search results when people are looking for new podcasts to listen to. So, again, if you could do that, I would really appreciate it. The podcast is available pretty much wherever you get podcasts. It's on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Stitcher, TuneIn, and CastBox. You can also get episodes from the website. That's www.letmebendyourear.com. So there's the episodes there. You can download them directly from the website. And you can also watch the podcast on YouTube and on Facebook. And like I said, this particular episode, or this video cast, as I'm calling it, I'm going to do more of these. Some of these will be, like I said, recorded episodes for the podcast, a visual element of it. This one won't be in the podcast feed, but I'm going to use this opportunities for these to comment on items of the day, news of the day, things that are more time sensitive or time dependent, as opposed to the podcast where I try to record episodes, like I said, that you could listen to now or you could listen to a year from now. So that's kind of the difference there. So again, if you like what you heard here, if you have any comments on this live or on the podcast, please reach out to me via Facebook or YouTube or here on Twitter. And I look forward to speaking to you guys again soon. Like I said, I'm going to really try to up my game on lives and do them as much as I can. Like I said, most of these are going to be late night ones as I put the little ones to bed and have the time to myself to do this. So either the people that are night owls now, or if you're listening on the West Coast behind us, let me know what you think. And I will be seeing everyone again soon. Take care, everybody. Have a great night.